In the political environment we live in today, we perhaps are lucky to be able to gather together as fellow patriots who share our common belief that freedom should and always will prevail. We are lucky to be able to do this without a police detail, or even worse. Many years ago, not too far from this very room, a handful of patriots began the struggle to free us all from tyranny. When that struggle began, one of the things our forefathers feared most was being able to speak their mind without being persecuted or even imprisoned. After countless battles and lives lost, we were free from that fear, at least for a while. One of the most important steps those patriots took to protect the right to speak our minds was indeed the right to keep and bear arms. As we know all too well, the world's history has taught us that no government will forever respect the rights of its people, the people it governs, unless those people maintain the ultimate ability to control the government itself. How heartbreaking it is now that one can walk across the sacred Concord Bridge knowing we are very close to living under fear again, if we aren't already. Perhaps in a cruel irony, today in America, we are often persecuted and prosecuted for publicly speaking our minds simply on the right to keep and bear arms. It is difficult these days to turn on a TV or read a newspaper without hearing about someone who's being denigrated for expressing their views, especially on our right, the issues we fight for. For really talking about the right that protects all others, we are immediately labeled. The main reason for doing this is to label us. If a label is stuck to us, then they somehow believe that our beliefs are frivolous, maybe even dangerous, and should be discounted. In many cases, the labels that are thrown at us are enough for some to call for disarmament, censorship. Some believe our views of freedom are so dangerous that we ourselves are a threat to this country, or at least what they want to make it. Imagine a day in our nation when our government and the media believe or have the opinion that speaking about or exercising true freedom is a threat to public safety. Not unlike the patriots of old, we here today are engaged in a different battle for freedom. This one perhaps even more trying than anything this still young nation has ever seen. It is not a struggle against tyranny to protect what our forefathers gave so dearly to build. It is actually a battle over the very meaning of freedom and perhaps even our nation's soul. If not the soul, then certainly the spirit. I'd like to read an old speech for you that for many reasons, even unknown to myself, I had found myself rereading over the past couple of years. I actually came back upon it a couple of years ago, actually in a book of speeches about our nation's history. That book was actually given to me by Mike Cassina's daughter, Michelle. This particular speech was given during an unendurable turmoil here in our great nation. For certain, another time in our young history when our nation was actually fighting for its very soul. Now, as I read this to you, I'd like you to remember what the author was talking about. I'd also like you to have reflected on how these words so eloquently apply to present day, not just what the author was talking about then. If you're able to do this, you'll see why I have kept reading this over and over again for the past couple of years. The man is Abraham Lincoln. 77 years ago, our forefathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met here on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, will long remember what we said here, but can never forget what they did there. Now, let me just stop there for a minute. Again, this speech was given during a great struggle for freedom, not only for a certain group of people, but for all people. I cannot and will not begin to actually compare our struggle today to that of those who suffered bondage many years ago. It is the importance of the words in the speech that reflect where we are today as a nation. Again, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. The question we face now is, can it? Can the freest nation in the world endure? Will freedom prevail, or is it just too much responsibility for too many? As I was saying before, those people who are engaged with us use labels to try to dissuade us from fighting for freedom. Perhaps because for them freedom is too hard, or even too scary. Or perhaps they have a different meaning for what freedom really is. They use terms like racist, bigot, but the most commonly used one today is angry, as if being angry about something somehow discounts our concerns. But you know what? For the sake of their argument, let's us explore that for just a second. Like most Americans today, I'm a little concerned about a few things. The more I make, the higher percentage of taxes that I pay. That the federal government has become a self-fulfilling machine that no longer represents the working family. This is a tough one. That my government spends billions of dollars and countless American lives securing the borders of free nations, and they tell me the job can't be done here. On a more local level, I have to ask my state government to exercise my rights. I have to pay them $100 to do that. I have to prove I'm a suitable person rather than the government proving I'm unsuitable. Can't buy the same handguns most everybody else can across the country. A 10-round magazine's okay, but 11-1 will land you in jail. I have to hide my gun when I'm in public. I have to hide who we are when we're in public. That my state mandates a license to exercise my civil rights, then provides no oversights or protections for that system. An unelected official who doesn't even sit on a bench can decide to take my rights away just because he or she feels like it. Yeah, so I guess I'm a little bit angry. Probably like a lot of other people in the room. But what we look at today is that Americans have forgotten. In his speech, Mr. Lincoln said, "The world will little note nor longer remember what we say here, but can never forget what they did here." Well, folks, I'm afraid they did. A lot of the world, and certainly a lot of Americans, have forgotten. They forgot Concord Bridge, Valley Forge, Gettysburg, all of World War I, Normandy Beach, Iwo, and all the rest.